Today from the global lane, Trump escalates his war on drugs and Nicolas Maduro. A look at Venezuela's China connection.
The CCP does the money laundering through Chinese banks. They supply the precursor chemicals and they supply the synthetic drugs. If they do that, they can basically control the entire region.
American anti-Semitism rising. Nearly 1 in 5 adults admit they're anti-Jewish.
This attack on the Judeo-Christian heritage is an attack on our fundamental values of our republic.
Re-examining faith. The Charlie Kirk effect on American spirituality.
Every time he spoke, it was more than a political message. It was basically, he was like a pastor. It's changed me for the better, and it wasn't temporary, it's been permanent.
Unprecedented prayer on the Mount of Olives. 1,000 Christians pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And basketball court chaos and a silent night in Indiana. And it's all right here on the global lane. War crime or the fog of war against drug cartels. The debate in Washington this week remains sharply focused on the concern and controversy surrounding a second drone strike on a drug boat heading to the U.S. To offer perspective on the execution of Trump's war on drugs, its strategy, and the backlash it has provoked is Joshua Phillip, Epoch Times senior investigative reporter, host of the show Crossroads. Joshua has spent years researching not only the Chinese Communist Party's efforts, but also those of other groups seeking to subvert U.S. systems and institutions, providing him with extensive insights into the complex dynamics at play here. Joshua, it's good to have you with us. So was this a second strike, the second strike killing the survivors of the initial strike, an extrajudicial killing prohibited by international law, or what? What's your thought on that?
Okay, so in my personal opinion, and like people can agree with it or not, but my personal opinion, what you're watching is the normal type of strike the United States has been carrying out against terrorist organizations going back to like Obama and, George Bush. Because, of course, if we remember the war on terror, it was very common, and I think we've all seen the videos, AC-130 gunships or Apache helicopters or, Predator drones. They strike a terrorist vehicle, terrorists make a run for it, and then they strike the guys running. There's been countless videos like that. That is the normal standard for U.S. military operations against terrorist organizations. And these cartels and gangs are now designated as terrorist organizations. And I mean, people can debate over the morality of that, but that is what we've been doing for, I think, well over a decade now as a country.
Yeah, so it's nothing new. The president and Secretary of War Hegseth described the Caribbean boat strikes as a war against narco trafficking, and the newly unveiled national security strategy, unveiled, I think, last Friday, shows something bigger, more than just sinking some drug boats. So tell us about the U.S. strategy to bring down the Venezuelan drug cartel, De Los Solis, and reassert U.S. dominance throughout the Western Hemisphere.
So this is massive. Basically, Pete Hegseth and, as he mentioned, the new U.S. national security strategy, they've stated the United States is now once again going to be enforcing the Monroe Doctrine. And basically going back to the early 1800s, what that meant was all of the Americas, North America, Central America, South America, this is the domain of the Americas, and any country trying to influence, interfere with it, or even gain strategic assets or footprints in it, America will not allow it. The United States will not allow it. And, of course, early on that meant no European colonies in the New World, so to speak. During the Cold War, that meant no Soviet interference or Chinese interference within the Latin America. Going into now, the United States is going to reassert a defensive structure, a system of building allies, and also a system of destroying threats and rooting out foreign influence, from China and otherwise throughout Latin America. And as it relates to Venezuela, this is a big deal, because Venezuela was kind of the beachhead to bring in Chinese Communist Party influence throughout all of Latin America. Drugs also tie into that, and we don't often think of drugs like this, but drugs are not just, they're not just for money. Drugs are tools to create networks of corruption that can be manipulated for political influence. And just look at Mexico, for example, where politicians get elected if they play the cartel game. If they don't, they get assassinated, they get murdered. In fact, There was cartels recently tried to use drones to blow up the offices of a prosecutor trying to investigate some of the drug cartels. If you don't play their game like these mayoral candidates, they murder you. And that means that every politician who gets elected is either turning a blind eye or part of it because of that network. And if they're being influenced by Chinese money, Chinese influence, Chinese drugs, which the cartels, again, the CCP does the money laundering through Chinese banks. They supply the precursor chemicals and they supply the synthetic drugs. If they do that, they can basically control the entire region. And they've been doing it since the time of Mao Zedong. Publicly disclosed, publicly stated strategies. They've been doing this since the time of Mao Zedong.
You talk about the influence that they have, money-wise. You're either dead or you turn a blind eye or go along with it. Some politicians on Capitol Hill are screaming loudly against this anti-drug cartel battle in the Caribbean. Have you investigated any congressional money connections to Venezuela, the Chinese, drug cartels? What did you discover?
In terms of U.S. politicians getting money from the cartels, I haven't seen that. I can say, though, that there are a lot of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and I would say large financial interests within NGOs especially, that do have a lot of interest on the mass migration front. And the cartels, people can like it or not, they do play a very heavy role in facilitating mass illegal immigration. I was actually down in Panama and in Mexico investigating what's really behind the border crisis. What I uncovered was this. I've been to the Darien Gap. I've been to the mouth of it. I gained access to the Embera Indian villages, and I've been in the migrant camps there. And what you find when you go in there is the United Nations is running the show. Right at the mouth of the Darien Gap, at the Embera Indian village, right on the river, they just bring them in on boats, one after the next, boatload, boatload, boatload. There's a United Nations checkpoint. They check in, they register, and then they're part of a bus network, and they just bus them all the way north to the U.S.-Mexico border. This was a facilitated, coordinated plan that was run in part very heavily through an agreement the United States had signed on to called the Global Compact for Safe and Orderly Migration. Run also, it was funded a lot through the State Department going to the United Nations. The United Nations then used the money to pay for non-governmental organizations, NGOs that ran the entire operation. Gangs and cartels were part of the network. Without those networks, those criminal networks, a lot of that doesn't work. And I'm not saying that they're all tied in with it, but I do think there are a lot of people who do not want these networks to be dismantled. And I think that's a big reason for it.
Big reason for the resistance right now, or the opposition: money laundering, human trafficking, drugs. Okay, you've been there. Joshua Phillip, thank you for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Hey, pleasure. Thank you.
Anti-Semitism rising on the home front. This month, a Manhattan Institute poll showed an alarming increase in anti-Jewish, anti-Israel sentiment and Holocaust denial in both the Republican and Democratic parties. A minority of 17% of Republican and 20% of Democrat respondents self-identified as anti-Semitic, expressed Holocaust denial or anti-Israel beliefs. 25% of Republicans under the age of 50 hold anti-Semitic views, and 37% of all respondents believe the Holocaust was exaggerated. Here to respond to the poll's findings is Jonathan Tobin, Jewish News Syndicate Editor-in-Chief. Jonathan, did the Manhattan Institute's findings surprise you? What disturbs you the most?
I think it's troubling, not entirely surprising, because what we've seen in this country, certainly in the last 2 years since the October 7th attacks on Israel, is a surge in anti-Semitism. We've seen it on college campuses where it's been fueled by woke myths about race, in which Jews in Israel are falsely branded as white oppressors. But we're also seeing it on the right as various podcasters, some of whom are imbibing the same myths about Israel and Jews, some that the left uses, and some digging up old neo-Nazi tropes about Jews we're hearing from people like the Groyper Nick Fuentes or people like Candace Owens, spreading both disinformation about Israel and what Jews are doing now, as well as digging into ancient tropes of anti-Semitism that we might have heard hundreds of years ago. So this isn't what most Americans believe. It's alarming that as many as a fifth of Americans might have been exposed to this and have started to believe it. But it's also, in a sense, understandable because that's what we're getting from both the far left and the far right. And as we've seen throughout history, it's the old horseshoe effect, as I've written about it, in politics, where both the extremists on the far right and the extremists on the far left join forces. As much as they disagree about some things, they join forces when it comes to seeking scapegoats and hating Jews. This is nothing new, but it's disturbing when we see it here in America.
And this is, as you said, nearly 1 out of every 5 adults. So do you believe this is just a momentary response, fleeting because of the Gaza war, or does it indicate a more disturbing anti-Jewish trend in America?
Well, anti-Semitism, is a virus. You can't entirely eradicate it. And it's not just ordinary, prejudice or unkindness. It's rooted in politics and in a way of some people trying to use it to attain power. But it is a product of what not merely the lies that are told about Israel since October 7th, but through the way the progressives, the wokeists have made their long march through institutions. And that's actually had an impact on the right as well. And young people are imbibing this. They're getting it from social media. Most people are getting, certainly young people are getting their news not from going to websites or reading things, but from their TikTok feeds. And the algorithms are frankly set up to accentuate anti-Semitism and hatred. And this is hatred for the West, hatred for the Judeo-Christian heritage that is dear and sacred to Americans who are not Jewish as well.
Jonathan, what needs to be done about the two parties, then Democrat and Republican, and in American society overall, to reverse this disturbing trend?
We need leadership from our leaders. We need people like President Trump and Vice President Vance to condemn the anti-Semites on their side of the spectrum, even if it's close personal friends like Tucker Carlson, who is platforming anti-Semitism, or others whom he has put on his show. And we need the leaders of the Democratic Party to condemn their anti-Semites, people like Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani in New York City. This attack on the Judeo-Christian heritage is an attack on our fundamental values of our republic. And if we let it spread, it will undermine everything our country stands for. America has always been exceptional. We've never had state-sponsored anti-Semitism in this country. We've been a different place. But just as the left is attacking American exceptionalism in this response, in this way, we've seen some people on the right doing it too. And that is being seen in these numbers, which show that young Republicans, young conservatives are as vulnerable to this hatred as the people on the left. That can't be allowed to stand. And again, we need our leaders. We need the people who are truly influencing opinion to not give any exemptions to various kinds of hatred just because of political alliances. This transcends politics. This is about who we are as a nation.
Okay, speaking out with clarity and courage. Jonathan Tobin, GNS Editor-in-Chief, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Charlie Kirk's martyrdom is leading to a surge in spirituality. A new Barna Group survey shows that Kirk's assassination is causing a wave of interest in faith and action, particularly among younger Americans. Nearly 1 in 3 adults questioned said they're taking some action as a result of Kirk's death. And spiritual responses outpace politics. 18% said they have taken spiritual action, 5% took political action, and 6% did both. Well, here with more on Charlie Kirk and the impact of his death on American society is writer, political commentator, and publicist Drew Allen, author of the book released this week, The Martyrdom of Charlie Kirk for Christ and Country. Drew, it's great to talk with you. So for a short while, you served as Charlie Kirk's publicist. What was it about him that has caused so many people to reflect on their spirituality?
Well, it's because he was a unique animal in a good way that really believed that faith and God and Christianity was more important than everything else. So everything flowed from that. And so every time he spoke, it was more than a political message. It was basically, he was like a pastor. And, for me, I did not know him personally. I was his publicist for a second to last book last summer, Right-Wing Revolution. But I think that I speak for millions of Americans who didn't know him personally, didn't break bread with him, but found themselves transformed by his death. It's changed me for the better, and it wasn't temporary. It's been permanent.
Well, let's talk about that, because I know in the book you write, quote, his assassination confronted me with the reality I'd been avoiding, and no other death in my life has pierced me so deeply. In what way, Drew, how did Charlie's death pierce your heart and change you?
It hit too close to home. First off was the circumstances that I learned of his death. So Charlie had two kids. He was younger than me, 31. I'm 38. But he had a 3-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. I've got a, approaching 3-year-old daughter and an approaching 1-year-old daughter as well. And I'm married. And I was sitting in my oldest daughter's, the parking lot at her preschool when I got the news. And then I saw the video while my wife went to retrieve our daughter. And my daughter was running towards the car, screaming just with pure, innocence and joy, dad, because I don't usually pick her up. I'm not there. And in that moment, the contrast of seeing my daughter so happy light up like that, to see her dad at her school and realizing that was taken from Charlie Kirk's family and kids in that moment. I hadn't really dug into his real core beliefs. And as I went out there looking, like many people, at the clips of Charlie Kirk and what he stood for, I realized that he was somebody that I wanted to become, someone I wanted to be, someone this country needs me and others to be, which is, go forth and make disciples of all nations is the activist message that Jesus Christ leaves us. And he did that, and he did it fearlessly, and he did it with love and compassion.
I know throughout the book you point out the radical left in this country still doesn't understand why people were drawn to Charlie Kirk and his legacy. You also discuss how leftists and Islamists are coming together as a significant political force, which does not surprise you, I'm sure. So in what ways are they similar? Why do you think they are attracted to each other?
Well, they both possess ideologies of pure destruction, and they have an attitude of a desire to conquer. There is no cohabitation, right? They just want to dominate. Islam as a religion wants to dominate, especially jihadists. They want to establish a caliphate. The radical left, of course, cannot tolerate any opposing views. And they're both producing violence in unprecedented levels. Islam's the only religion that is responsible for, globalized, jihad. And despite the left's propaganda, which I get into in the book as well, there isn't a plight of, right-wing violent terrorism or extremism in this country. It's actually, it's not symmetrical at all. It's all coming from the left. It rejects religion. It rejects a transcendent power above us, and it believes in moral relativism, and it's dangerous.
And you point out that mainstream truths have been chipped away over the years. Charlie Kirk talks about family values, the sanctity of life, same-sex marriage. You even spend a whole chapter on transgenderism. So why are traditional values like protecting children and marriage under attack today? Why are centuries of biblical truths being pushed aside all of a sudden?
Well, it's the same reason that communists, sought to eradicate religion, for example. They want to destabilize our society, this is a Christian nation. People should understand that. They should reject this propaganda from the left that is intended to get Christians to sit on the sideline and not enter the political arena and battlefield for this country. But, you know, the family, for example, marriage, these things have proven to be successful for countries and nations to keep them together, you know, throughout history. They're obvious things. And the left, of course, wants to undo that and eradicate those things. So they assault those stabilizers in a country because at the end of the day, they're Marxist revolutionaries that want to, you know, all they care about is political power. That's the altar for them. That's what makes me different or Charlie different, is that, you know, politics isn't the end all for us. You know, we believe in Jesus Christ. We believe in the gospel. We believe that, you know, this world will end and there is something after this. And we look to God for those immutable truths. And the left doesn't believe in that.
Okay, the book is The Martyrdom of Charlie Kirk for Christ and Country. I've read it. I highly recommend it. It's a book that isn't just about Charlie Kirk's political views. You'll also find scripture and plenty of spiritual reflection inside. Drew Allen, thanks for setting us straight today. We appreciate it.
God bless you. Appreciate it.
God bless you. With the Christmas season here, I wanted to share 2 uplifting holiday news stories with you, in case you haven't seen them yet. Pastors and church leaders from across America traveled to Israel for the first ever Ambassadors Summit, even during one of their busiest times of the year. Their purpose? To stand with Israel and combat anti-Semitism. While panel discussions and meetings were held as usual, one detail truly caught my attention. 1,000 Christians stood at the Mount of Olives, praying for the peace of Jerusalem and Israel. I can't recall that ever happening in my lifetime. It was certainly a rare and significant event. Many of us know Psalm 122:6, which says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure." Yet few people recite the verses that follow. In verses 7 through 9, the psalmist writes, "May there be peace within your walls and security within your citadels. For the sake of my family and friends, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity." Another encouraging event occurred right here in the USA. This is something you rarely witness at a college basketball game. For the past 28 years, students at Taylor University in Upland, Indiana, have taken part in the so-called Silent Night. Donning a variety of get-ups and costumes, the entire arena is silent, not a word, until the Trojans score their 10th point. And then the chaos erupts. A media timeout for a brief Christmas celebration. And when the game ends, the entire arena links arms to sing Silent Night. Folks, during this Christmas season, let us warmly remember the true meaning of that silent night. Each of us longs for the rescue and peace that is only found in the babe born in a manger, Emmanuel, God with us. All we need to do is embrace the gift he lovingly offers, repent and believe. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.